I just made a video where I talked about how powerful it can be to memorize a poem. But in this video, I'm going to talk about how I actually memorize the poem and how you can do it as well. So the poem I had memorized was called Invictus. And the method that I used to memorize it was using a memory palace. Now, if you're familiar with my channel, you've seen me talk about memory palaces over and over again. So if you need a refresher, just search my channel. So the poem has 4 stanzas, each of 4 lines. That's 16 lines total. So my memory palace consisted of 16 locations, 1 line per location. Now in this video, I'm going to go through all the images I created to memorize this poem. And I encourage you to follow along with your own memory palace so you can memorize the poem as well, while also learning how I generally approach memorizing something like a poem. Now, the memory palace that I use is a apartment/townhouse that I'm familiar with, so it won't really mean much to you. And then whenever I come up with my image for the line, just place it in your memory palace instead of mine. Now, there's a bit of a process to this whole thing. It's not as simple as just coming up with all these images. Poems are hard. Since we're trying to memorize it word for word, all these little words and word order matter. So that means that my memory palace is really just going to be holding very basic imagery to just capture the essence of what each line says or means. And then after that first pass of memorizing the basic structure, what I'm going to do is another pass where I start to pepper in all the details of all those extra filler words that fill up and make the actual line up. So adding a few more images to the images I already have, give more detail so that the line becomes more complete. I'll show you what I mean by example. We're going to go through the whole poem line by line, all the images that I came up with in my first pass. I'll share them with you. And then I'll also show you during the second pass what I might add to fill out those images. Now, this is the process I did to memorize and recite the poem that you saw me do in my last video. If you haven't seen that video, by the way, you should watch it. It's very nice. Now, the very first thing you have to do before you memorize anything is to read the damn poem. Have a proper read through the poem, and while you're doing it, actively read it. Try to understand what the author is trying to say, what the poem is trying to express. If possible, sometimes these poems can be so abstract, really hard to read, but do your best. Try to find information about what the poem was originally intended for. If you can learn more about the poem, get excited or interested about the poem, that'll make the whole memorization process even easier because you'll have this meta knowledge about what the poem means and a lot more context about the whole thing. So once you've learned about the poem, once you've read through the poem actively, now you're ready to use your memory palace and start laying down that foundation. Hi. All right, so the first line of this poem is, "Out of the night that covers me." Now, that's a very simple line, but again, for this first pass, I don't care about all the little minutia of that line, all the little words. I'm just gonna take the general idea, and usually that can come down to maybe grabbing a word or two that pop out at me, or just the main concept, or a group of words that make a small phrase. And I'll encode that as an image, and that'll be my image that I place at my location in my memory palace. So for this line, that would be the night covering. So my image will be literally some kind of blanket of night, some darkness, some night covering me. And I would place this or imagine this happening at the first location of my memory palace. Now my memory palace, this townhouse, the first location is kind of out front by the front door on this kind of patio outdoor area. So I'm standing at the front door outside there, and then all of a sudden this kind of blanket of night, this night covers me, and it's complete darkness, and I'm tired because it's night. That's it. Again, this is the first pass. I don't care about the detail, just a brief image to lay the foundation, and then I move on to the next line. Line number 2, black is the pit from pole to pole. Now, the next location in my memory palace as I walk through the door of this townhouse, immediately to my right is this L-shaped couch. And I'm going to picture, for this line, a black pit. So to me, I think of like the pit of some kind of fruit, right? And it's black as can be, pitch black, black pit. And then I have that phrase pole to pole. So I might imagine taking this black pit, putting it on the couch and bashing the shit out of it with a pole. Black pit, pole. That's it. I thank whatever gods may be. That's the next line. And it's a pretty straightforward line. My next location is after the couch, there's kind of a bar counter area where I put my laptop and I do some of my work. So I can just imagine that at the counter, I'm answering my emails and I'm thanking gods. So I'm just emailing one god after the other and just saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm thanking the gods. For my unconquerable soul. So the next location after the bar counter, it kind of extends into the kitchen. That same counter now is next to the sink. And so what I might imagine is there is this kind of floaty, ghost-like soul, immovable, just standing there by the sink on that counter. It's unconquerable. Can't move it, can't shake it, can't defeat it, can't get rid of it. It's unconquerable. In the fell clutch of circumstance. And so after the sink, now I'm next to the fridge. So I'm gonna picture for fell clutch, I think of like a clutch, like the clutch of a car. It's falling, has fallen, has fell. And circumstance, I might think of like circumnavigate, just to help me remember the circum something. So I might imagine that this clutch just falls right in front of the fridge and starts to circumnavigate on its own around this fridge. So fell clutch, circumnavigate, even though it's circumstance. I have not winced nor cried aloud. Now the next location next to the fridge, there's kind of like this back door that goes into the hallway of the condominium. And I might picture that maybe I stubbed my toe in the door or something like that. And I have not winced nor cried aloud in pain. And actually, to maybe stress the word winced, cried aloud, maybe I do actually wince and cry aloud when I stub my toe. I love this line. Under the bludgeonings of chance. Now, my next location next to the door is a little folding door that leads to like a little pantry. So bludgeoning I know to mean, to beat something. And chance, kind of hard to visualize. So I might make the image a little more tangible and make it Chance the Rapper. All right, so I can imagine in front of this pantry, maybe Chance the Rapper's trying to get a little snack. And I say, no snacks for you, Chance the Rapper. And I bludgeon the crap out of him. So bludgeonings, Chance the Rapper. My head is bloody, but unbowed. Now the next location after the pantry, you walk down a little bit back towards the front door and there's a staircase, but under the staircase is kind of like a little cubby bookshelf. So that's the next location. Head is bloody, unbowed are kind of the things that pop out at me. And so I'm going to picture a bloody head. And then unbowed, it's kind of hard to visualize, but the word bow or bow, I might picture an actual bow to help me remember that word. Now again, with these images, they don't always have to be exactly what the word means. My goal is to remember these key words so that I say them when I perform this. So unbowed is a very odd word I wouldn't usually say. Kind of hard to remember that one. So if I can picture a bow, that will help cue the word bow or bow or unbowed. Now, in this bookshelf, I'm just going to picture a bunch of bloody heads with bows stuck to them as if they're all presents or something like that. Okay, now that we're about halfway through the poem, you get the idea of how I'm coming up with these images, so let's pick up the pace just a little bit. Beyond this place of wrath and tears, we're coming around up the stairs now to the second floor. So on the stairs, I'm going to place this image. And beyond makes me think of To Infinity and Beyond, so I think of Buzz Lightyear. So Buzz Lightyear is on the stairs, and wrath and tears. So I can just imagine Buzz Lightyear just causing so much wrath, absolutely in tears. Looms, but the horror of the shade. Now for this one, loom, I think of like the device you use to like weave thread into fabric, a loom. And horror and shade are kind of the two other concepts that stick out at me. Horror makes me think of like a horror film, so I immediately think of the Scream character. So that's my image for horror. And then shade, just like somebody in the shade. So maybe the loom is being operated by the Scream guy, and he's kind of in the shade. And this is happening at the top of the stairs on the second floor, the staging area. There's the loom with the Scream guy in the shade. And yet the menace of the years. So now this line, after you are upstairs, you then go into the bathroom and there's a mirror on the left-hand side. So this is where my next location is, and yet the menace of the years. So for me, I think of the word yet is important, and then menace. So I'm gonna imagine yet, it's hard to picture. So I might picture like a Yeti, and this Yeti is a menace. So you can imagine in front of this mirror, maybe he's thrashing about, maybe he's cracking the mirror, maybe he's putting lipstick and makeup all over the mirror. He's a menace. This Yeti is a menace. Finds and shall find me unafraid. And so this is the end of that third stanza. We are now opposite the mirror in this bathroom. There's like a glass window shower thing. So I'm gonna picture something to do with find and unafraid. So maybe I can imagine like I'm looking in the shower, trying to find something, and I'm unafraid. Maybe it's a disgusting shower covered with hairs and pubes all over the wall, really disgusting, and I'm out to find these things, and I'm trying to be unafraid of what I find. Oh my God, God damn. It matters not how straight the gate. So now we've come out of the bathroom, we're going towards the bed, there's a bedside table, that's the next location. And I'm going to place this image of a straight gate. So I'm gonna imagine an actual gate, a miniature gate on this bedside table, and it's as straight as can be. Straight edges, all the vertical bars of this gate are perfectly straight. No curves, no bends, nothing. Straight gate. That's it. How charged with punishments the scroll. So for this one, I'm kind of gravitated towards charged punishments scroll. So for charge, I think of like something electrically charged. And there's this scroll with a list of punishments on them. Being beheaded, drawn and quartered, lethal injection. And the scroll, if you touch it, you get electrocuted because it's charged. And so the next location is next to the bedside table. It's the actual bed itself. So on the bed is this scroll with a list of punishments, and it's electrically charged. So if you try to touch it, you just get electrocuted. I am the master of my fate. If you go to the other side of the bed, there's kind of like a banister that looks down to the first floor of the loft. So I'm gonna picture Metallica playing Master of Puppets, all set up there on the banister, and they're just going at it, playing Master of Puppets. Now, I wanna remember master and fate. Fate is kind of hard to visualize, but it kind of sounds like faint, like fainting. Imagine Metallica, the entire band, is just playing Master of Puppets until they faint. I am the captain of my soul. That's the last line. And after the banister, you kind of make your way to the very back corner of the second floor, and there's like a door to go to the balcony. That's the last location. Captain makes me think of like Captain America. Of course, soul, I just think of a soul. So maybe this Captain America is by the back door there, and he's like guarding that door, so much so that his soul escapes him. And that's it. We've just memorized the basic structure of this 16-line poem. Cool. All right, so should we recap that? Let's go back through our memory palace, and you go through yours, I'll go through mine, and we'll see if we can come up with the same images. So the first location, we were at the front door. There was the night covering me. We walk in, there's the couch there. We had the black pit and beating it with a pole. Then we go to the counter, the third location. I'm on my computer typing thanks to gods. Then we continue near the sink on the counter there. Unconquerable soul. Then we go to the fridge, we have the falling clutch and the circumnavigating. Then the door, I stubbed my toe, winced, cried aloud. Then the pantry, bludgeoning Chance the Rapper. Under the stairs in the cubby there, the bookshelves, we had bloody heads with bows on them. Up the stairs, we had Beyond to Infinity and Beyond Buzz Lightyear, Wrath, and he was crying tears. We go upstairs to the platform, the loom being operated by the Scream guy, horror, in the shade. Then the bathroom by the mirror, we had the Yeti that was a menace. Opposite that, in the glass shower, we were finding things and we were unafraid. Then we went to the bedside table, the straight gate, the bed, charged punishment scroll. The banister was Master of Puppets, master, faint, fate. And then finally the back door, we had Captain America, soul, Captain Soul. There it is. Now, hold on a second here. All right, now, what do we do with that? Because that's not the actual poem, right? Just little snippets of words here. No. So the next thing you do is you go back through the poem and read all the lines. And so now everything you've just placed in your memory palace, you can add a little more context by what you read. But that second read through, now that you've memorized some of it, will actually help naturally land some more of those words for you without having to memorize much more. But it is important to do another read through once you've done that first pass. Now, that second pass I mentioned earlier, all right? Now you go back through your memory palace. You can start to add some more details to the images that you already have there to help you remember some of the other concepts or words in that line. For example, under the bludgeonings of Chance. So our image was bludgeoning Chance the Rapper. But now maybe you want to remember that it's under the bludgeonings of Chance, right? So that word under is important. So maybe what you do, instead of imagining beating Chance the Rapper like this, maybe you imagine that you're using a stick or something and you're going under. You're beating him from underneath, from down up. Subtle difference, but you're just tweaking the image that you already had there. And so now you will remember that it's under bludgeonings Chance. And now what about those other words? Under the bludgeonings of Chance, right? So these I call filler words. Now some of those will just naturally come because the line won't be under bludgeonings Chance. You almost naturally want to say under the bludgeonings of Chance. Now whether it's a or a the or an of or an if or that or this or those or which, these tiny little words can maybe get confused. With practice and rehearsing, those will come. And then the rest of it, my friends, is fucking practice. It is a poem, after all. It's a performance. You're going to recite it and insert emotion and feeling and thought and intellect into how you say the words. It's not just a straight robotic recall. It's a poem. And just like being fluent in a language or fluent in any information, you have to rehearse it, you have to practice for it to become part of you, to just come out and feel natural. And unfortunately, that won't come from extracting it from a memory palace. The memory palace technique is very important, though, to get you to that point, because once you can get that information in your head, you have a place from where you can rehearse it easier. And there will be a point where you've accessed this poem so many times from your memory palace that eventually it's just automatic, just muscle memory. And that's where you want this poem to be in the end. So that's my process for memorizing any poem or any speech or text or toast or whatever, anything to do with text. There's a memory palace component, there's a big repetition part of it, and there's a lot of reading and analyzing and trying to get interested and understand the thing that I'm reading. That's a big part of it. But anybody can do it, and this can be done quite quickly. To learn that poem, for example, only took me about 10-15 minutes. And then of course, I had to do a few rehearsals to get it really nice and tight, but ultimately it didn't take very long. So that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. Make sure to watch the video where I actually recite this poem over some nice scenery of the mountains in the Himalayas. You can check that video out here. I'll put it in the description. And thanks for a great year, everybody. I'll see you next year. I'm the master of my fate. I'm the captain of my soul.